Good afternoon, everybody. I did not announce this Facebook Live, but I thought I would just throw something up and see who joins me today. It's Friday, and as you may or may not be able to tell, I am in a hotel room, and housekeeping has not been here yet, so the bed is unmade. I apologize, because God forbid I make my own bed. I hope everyone's doing well today. It's Friday, it's rainy. I'm up in Kelowna, Canada. BC, Canada, and I'm looking forward to some spring weather. I hope you guys are too. Today we are going to be talking about the 4 basic stretches absolutely everybody should be doing. Now there is some differing of opinions regarding stretching in general, when to stretch, how long to stretch, etc. And let's talk about that right out of the gate. Stretching before you are properly warmed up. Ooh, that's right. Let me sit up again. Stretching before you are properly warmed up, yes, can create some little micro tears in the muscle tissue. We have to be very careful, but you can do dynamic stretching, which is almost more, not ballistic, but has some movement to it. And we're not going to talk about that today. What we are going to talk about the 4 basic stretches that we should all be doing, and we should do them every day regardless of whether we're actually doing activity or not. Because these stretches not only help keep your legs stretched out, but they help keep your low back and hips in a really good position. They're simple. They have a wide variety of benefit. So that's what we're going to do today. So as far as stretching right before an activity, like I was saying, you don't actually have to. In fact, there are some studies that tell us that we shouldn't. I kind of like to, so often I'll warm up a little bit first for a couple of minutes, then I'll do some stretching, and then I'll do whatever my cardio activity is. I don't know if you guys have a differing of opinion on that, if you have thoughts as far as how you like to do your stretching, but for sure, after activity, we want to be doing some really good stretching because activity tightens our muscles. And if we don't do some good stretching, we can lose flexibility. We can get little bits of scar tissue that limit our range of motion, little micro tears in the muscle, things like that. So stretching is very beneficial. I also advise a lot of my patients, if they are terrible stretchers, then take once a week and do a 1-hour yoga video or some kind of extended stretching, because even that is beneficial. So even if you just do a really thorough stretch, maybe with some foam roller or something a week, that is beneficial if you are kind of sakimoto on doing your stretches after your activity. But I do encourage you to do stretches after activity. So what stretches do you do? Well, there's lots of upper body and types of stretches and that kind of thing, but really, if you're super limited on time, then the ones that I'm going to recommend are 4 what I call lower body stretches, and they look like leg stretches, but they actually help unlock the low back and the pelvis, because we're going to do hip flexor, quad, hamstring, and glute, and all of those have some sort of fiber connection to the lower back area. And they're just great stretches because guess what? We all sit too much. And when you sit, your hip flexors shorten and your hamstrings shorten. You don't get enough movement in your quads, and your glutes flaccid, not working when you're sitting. And so that doesn't do them any good either. And so we definitely want to wake them up, stretch them regularly. Okay, let's get down to it. Say hello if you checked in. Please do. Send a little heart or a thumbs up if you're watching so that I know that you're out there. And just ask any questions as we go. If you have any questions about stretching in general or exercise and fitness in general. Last week or the week before, we just did sort of an impromptu Facebook Live asking questions and things around exercise. So if you missed that one, go back, because we covered quite a few different topics that were sort of fun and interesting to think about and talk about. So I hope you go back and check that one out. Anyways, we're going to get started. So quad stretch, hamstring, hip flexor, and butt. Super key to keep your low back loose. In fact, I'm going to tell you a story because I like to tell stories. My mother, we were coming back from a cruise and her low back was killing her and she was complain. And I said, Mom, let's go through those low back stretches that I showed you, or lower body stretches that I showed you. No, it's fine, it's fine. So she's literally crunched over the cart with all the suitcases. I said, stop. And we went through them, and we only did 30 seconds on each stretch. And as soon as she stood up, I knew she was standing up taller. She wasn't flexed over in that low back pain, but she didn't say anything right away. And then she's going through the airport, and she's like, I feel better. I said, I know you do. And she said, how could those stretches help my low back? And I said, because if you understand the anatomy, they help release the low back. If you think of a teeter-totter, if one side of the teeter-totter is weighted down, let's do tug-of-war. Tug-of-war is easier to explain. Two sides of a tug-of-war. One side's pulling really hard. That's your tight low back. The other side that's going to also get really tight is your legs, because they're going to counterbalance that. So we can look at that conversely too. If your leg muscles, yay, thumbs up. If your leg muscles and the 4 areas that we're going to stretch are really, really tight, then your low back's going to be tight. And if we can release and relax these guys, then your low back starts to let go. Hi, Annie. Great to see you. Okay, we're going to go over some stretches. So that's how that balance between the low back and these lower body stretches are connected. And so, yes, you need to stretch your legs and hips and everything anyway, but it has a benefit to that low back balance. Okay, so let's get started. So, again, don't mind my messy hotel room. Okay, we are going to do quads first, and almost everybody knows how to do a quad stretch. You grab your ankle and you pull, but there's a couple watch outs. Number 1, do not arch don't throw an arch into your low back. And if you have trouble getting your heel without arching, or your foot without arching your low back, squeeze your butt and pull it between, tuck your tail between your legs. That'll take the arch out of the low back. It will help stretch that quad more anyway. So it's a good way to practice that quad stretch, is a little bit of a butt squeeze, tuck your tail, and do the quad stretch from that position. The second thing we always mess up is we're like, woo, way out here, stretching all over the place. Keep that knee in tight to the other knee, okay? So keep the knee in tight, give it a good squeeze, tuck the butt and pull it under, and you get a nice pull right through that quad. Now, holding. How long do we want to hold these little stretches? Well, my philosophy is 30 seconds minimum. If you really want to get into the physiology of Golgi tendon organ release to help a stretch reflex come back to the muscle, then each area you want to have 60 seconds, but you can break that up. So you could do 3 20-second stretches, you can do 2 30-second stretches, but as long as you're doing a good 30-second slow count on each muscle, I'm happy. Most people do not stretch long enough in order for that muscle to actually let go and get a really good stretch. So keep that in mind. That was the quad stretch. Now we're going to talk about the butt stretch. So those of us that sit a lot, you can push back from your desk, or if you're just off the treadmill or just off the elliptical, just go and find a bench to sit on, and you cross that ankle over the opposite knee, and you start to lean forward. And so, hi Cynthia, good to see you. Now, some people say, ooh, I'm not really feeling a stretch. Take your hand and slightly push down, okay? You can push down there and lean forward. Now, if you have something that inhibits you from stretching like this, another way to get at that butt or glute muscles, it's a slightly different area but still a very good stretch, is you just bring this knee toward the opposite shoulder, and you will still get a little stretch over here. And again, you're doing stretches on both sides. You're holding for a count of 30, and repeat them a couple times, okay? And it does not take that long. So even if you did each stretch 2 times, the whole thing's going to take you 4 minutes, not that long. Okay, so that's the butt stretch. We did the quad stretch. I'm sure I'm going to remember stuff as I go along to just tag into each of these stretches. Hip flexor. This is the trickiest one. Most people have a hard time getting at that hip flexor and understanding what it is they're trying to stretch. So let's talk anatomy just for a minute. So your hip flexor is also called your iliopsoas muscle. A lot of people think the psoas muscle is different than a hip flexor. Well, the iliopsoas muscle is like a Y, and so you have your iliacus and you have your psoas, and it comes together to make the iliopsoas, and it comes through the hip and attaches to the quad. So it's what gives you this movement, this flexion movement. And guess what? When we're seated all day long, they shorten. They get very, very, very tight. And so then you head to the gym and you do your treadmill or whatever, and now they're like, oh my gosh, now I'm all confused and tight, and they need to be stretched. They need to be stretched during your day at the office. They need to be stretched after activity. But they're a little hard to find. And so one of the best ways I found, there's two methods. Take a lunge, okay? Keep that back heel as close to the ground as you can, and just start to bend down. Now notice my body is upright, not forward. As soon as you go forward, you're shortening that hip flexor, and so it's not going to get a stretch. You want it lengthened. So I'm upright. I can feel this. Many of my patients do not in this position. They're like, I'm not feeling anything. If anything, they're feeling a calf stretch, telling me their calves are way too tight. So how do you find it? Well, we take our hand, we reach up toward the ceiling, and we draw a line across the ceiling to the opposite side. Looks like this, okay? We're up and over. Now, we want to keep the shoulders level. Don't let them do this, because again, that's just going to shorten it. Shoulders are level, and we're up and over. If anything, you almost rotate back to open this all up. That's a great way to get the hip flexor. Another way, kneel, okay? And you just start to lean forward, and you should be able to feel something here. If you don't, same thing, reach up, draw a line across the ceiling, lean it back just a little bit to open this section, and that is number 2. So those are 2 pretty easy ways to stretch the hip flexors. So we've talked about quad, hip flexor, and butt so far. Let me grab this question. Hi, Jenny Butler. Good to see you. Excellent. I know there was a question there, so I'm going to come back to that or ask it quickly again so I can see it because it just disappeared. Lastly, we're talking about hamstrings, and everybody on the planet, I think, has hamstrings, again, because we sit. That shortens them dramatically. We drive, shortens them. And so these 4 stretches are fantastic for long drives. So when you are going on a road trip, you get out every couple hours, you walk around the car a bunch of times and go through these 4 stretches because it will help release that low back and those tight leg muscles from the seated and sitting in a car. Butt's even lower than knees, so things are even shorter. And that's why a lot of times you get that low back pain at the end of a long drive. And so these work really well for that. But we're back to hamstring. Lots of ways to stretch a hamstring. And the way I like is, hi Nicole, good to see you. Legs straight up, okay? You know, keep a nice stable support on this side. Keep your toe flexed up, okay? That gives a nice stretch here. Now here's the mistake lots of people make. I'm stretching my hamstrings. No, you're not. Well, you are, but you're going to hurt your back. Chest up, okay? Toe up, and drive your sternum to the opposite wall. So it's just this. It's maybe this far, and I stretch these all the time, and I'm only getting this far before I'm really feeling a big stretch. So you don't have to go up this high. You can just put your foot on a step and drive those toes to the ceiling and then lean forward. If you're very flexible, you can put it up even higher. Okay, you can also do hip flex or hamstring stretches from a seated position, you know, over on the stretching mats at the gym. Just be cognizant of what your back's doing. And that's a really good way to do it. So we talked quads, keep that knee tight, tuck your butt under, hold for 30. We talked butt stretch, easy peasy, pull back from your desk, just cross your ankle over your opposite knee and lean forward. We talked hip flexor, a little more tricky to target. So you want to get into your lunge position, and the biggest trick is to rise that hand up and lean it over, tracking that shoulder back just a little bit or even, but not forward, because that'll shorten it, then you're not going to get a stretch. And hamstring was the last one. Just get up on a small elevation, like a step or 2 steps, and toe up and lean forward. Okay, so quad, butt, hamstring, and hip flexor are all amazing ways to stretch so that you release the low back, because remember, they're on either side of a tug-of-war. Low back here, quad or leg muscles here, and if these are all really tight, your low back has to counterbalance by being tight. If we release these quads, hip flexors, butt, and hamstrings, low back can release and be much more relaxed. This alone, getting patients stretching like this a couple times a day, I've had several patients have their low back pain almost eliminated as a result, because a lot of times that low back is a muscle imbalance, just simple muscle imbalance. And so by correcting that and lengthening some of the muscles that are really hyperactive can be so effective. Hi Ariana, good to see you. Can't wait to stretch. Okay guys, I just wanted to check in today and share with you a few stretches. I'm so glad to any of you that joined me. And check out wellfitandfed.com if you like this video. There are tons of videos on there. My YouTube channel has tons of videos, so just go to